This is TNCRadio.live.
Hey, this is the Road Hammers. You're listening to TNCRadio.live.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live, where James Rogers, Jamie Irvine, and Tom Kelly provide owner-operators of commercial trucks with expert advice about starting, operating, and growing a professional trucking fleet. It's time to mind your trucking business.
Thank you, Ron. Welcome in, everybody. TNCRadio.live, Mind Your Trucking Business. I'm Tom Kelly, along with Jamie Irvine and James Rogers, here with you for the next hour, talking about making sure your business is running right in the trucking industry. Lots of stuff to talk about this week. First up, we want to talk a little bit about employment law, especially AB 5 as it exists out in California, known by other names other places, but basically referred to as AB 5. It's going to make things very interesting in the future to see where this particular law goes and how it's going to work with the trucking industry, especially around owner-operators. James, you've been looking at this for a while. The way I understand it is that this essentially puts owner-operators in a position where they have to be working W-2 for somebody. They can't just be an independent contractor if they're working for another trucking company. So in other words, if I own my own truck, I don't particularly work for anybody, and say 1 week I want to do stuff for you and the next week I want to do stuff for Jamie, it's going to make it very difficult, if not impossible, for me to do that and maintain my status as a non-employee.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, they changed, this all goes back years. This has been going on for a couple of years now. And what they did was they took California's labor laws, the questioning that they would use to decide if somebody was an independent contractor or an employee. That I think it was at one point like a 13-step process for verification to identify it, and they consolidated it down into 3 questions, 3 prongs, the ABC test. And it's the problem is in the B prong where it states that a contractor can't do the same thing as what their parent company is that they're contracting. So just like you said, a independent contractor or lease operator, the way this law is written, cannot drive a truck or be a truck driver if their carrier is a truck driver. So that's essentially the way that's written right now. It'll pretty much end the model that's been used in this industry for decades. There are some other ways that people are trying to see of legally working around it with structuring of the business and whatnot, but that's a whole nother discussion. But on the surface of it, yes, it could actually end that model. And what makes it even more frightening is that depending on where it goes, there are other states that are already basically chomping at the bit to enact it as well, which would end it in those states. And it'll be a big hindrance on the industry. But more importantly, it'll be a big hindrance on the state of California because of all the port work. That's how I'd say probably up over 90% of the port drivers are independent contractors. So if you force them to either be a W-2 employee or they are forced to go get their own authority and become a carrier themselves, which most of them don't want to do. They don't want to deal with that back office part of it. They just want to be independent. They want to work when they want to work. They want to do what they want to do. It's gonna cause a lot of guys to leave the industry. There's already been a mass exodus of mega carriers that left the state when this thing was even first put into place. It's like Prime left, Landstar left, Schneider left. They no longer allow lease operators or owner operators to operate in that state. They have to be W-2, which brings me to another point is the way they currently have the law. The biggest thing that's scary is that they're trying to determine that if it does go into effect, are owner operators, independent contractors who are based outside of the state. Can you even go into the state and operate? Can you bring freight from the Midwest to California legally? Because it's really a tricky law right now that's on the table. And I think it was 2021, by April or June, the California Trucking Association was able to get an injunction placed against it that kind of gives us a reprieve right now. So we're kind of waiting to hear from the Ninth Circuit Court, who was in session, to see if they were going to hear it on the docket.
But this just in, the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday, that's today, declined to take up a lawsuit from a trucking industry group claiming that a California worker classification law will be devastating for the industry and should be blocked. The justices denied a petition by the California Trucking Association claiming the 2019 law, commonly known as AB 5, makes it more difficult for businesses to treat workers as independent contractors rather than employees. This is blocked by federal regulations governing the industry. So this petition has been denied by the Supreme Court. One of the questions that I have is, okay, so you force independent contractors to either, one, set up their own company and go beyond just the independent contractor status, or they become an employee. So either, one, you're making it harder for the small business owner, or two, you're going to make it so that even mid-sized freight companies are not going to be able to handle the increased cost. Because you can imagine, right? Let's say I'm a freight carrier and I have 100 independent contractors, 100 owner operators working for me. Now, all of a sudden, what am I supposed to do? I have to buy 100 trucks off of those guys who own their own trucks? I don't want to buy those trucks. They're older. Oh. They're I don't have the cash to do that. So effectively, you're going to push not only small business owners like owner operators out of business, you're going to push mid-sized companies also. And to your point, James, this is in the state of California, where the the largest port in the world, I don't remember the exact number, but a massive amount of the entire freight for North America goes through the port in Los Angeles. So we're going to cripple the supply chain even further, driving up inflation even more? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely ridiculous, and you're correct. I mean, if you think about it, to where, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago, that was one of the biggest things, is that they were complaining and saying we don't have enough trucks to move freight from the port. There was such a backlog at the port with, you even had tankers out sitting waiting. You had, freighters that were waiting to get unloaded because we didn't have enough trucks to get it moved. But if this law goes, it's going to create even more of a logjam. And like you said, it's going to cause a big hindrance on small businesses, smaller carriers. Like even for myself, I'll use myself for an example. We use a contractor model. So in the case that if we were forced to all of a sudden transition our contractors to W-2, not only would it be a concern about equipment, now you got a concern about payroll, benefits, all that stuff. You basically increase your overhead, I'd say, by at least 100 to 200%. So yeah, that's going to force a lot of smaller carriers and mid-sized carriers to say, you know what, I got to close the doors as well, because this industry is unique, and it's been operating this way for as far as I can remember, and it's been effective, it's been efficient. It's kind of like a grassroots business, but this right here is going to completely just destroy it. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and this is a unique industry, the trucking industry, and we fall under the Federal Aviation Administration authorization. Therefore, these labor laws should not be applicable to us, because the trucking industry falls under that administration, and there is laws in place that prohibit the state from regulating the prices, routes, and services offered by trucking companies.
Yeah. Jamie, that's the whole point of what SCOTUS just said is, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're wrong.
They're not. You do not. Well, it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. That they just set the law of the land, and the whole world just changed today.
Yeah,
I mean, it really did. I can't undersell this, or however you want to put that. This is huge news that came in just as we're doing this show. That this is a game changer, and
it is.
I don't think any of these people who are making these decisions from SCOTUS and the lawmakers in Cal, they don't get what's really going to happen next. And
no, they don't.
The only way to really fix this, guys, is let it happen and let the whole thing blow up, and so that everybody sees, oh, okay, well, that doesn't work, because otherwise it's just not going to be fixed.
No, it's not. I mean, that is huge breaking news, because now that's going to open the door up to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Jersey, who are standing by with their AB 5 law in hand, waiting for that ruling. Now that opens the door for them to just throw it out there. So you're talking even more ports affected, especially in the Northeast. Like going back to a supply chain crunch. The California ports were so overwhelmed that they were actually moving these cargo ships around to the East Coast to to go to these ports to be unloaded. So now you lose even more truck capacity. So, I mean, it's I don't want to use this word, and I don't want to try to be a soothsayer, but it's going to destroy this industry. It really is. It's going to push out the independent contractor in these states right now, and hopefully it does not spread like wildfire. Somebody corrects it. That's the only thing I know to say.
All right, well, let's talk more about that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us right here, tncradio.live. Mind your trucking business. We'll be right back.
I'm Hope Savara. Join us on tncradio.live at 7 p.m. Eastern with Building Strong Minds with your host, Dr. Christopher Cortman.
Kathy DeCaro is nothing short of amazing. She not only drives the world's biggest truck as a heavy equipment operator in northern Alberta, Canada. She's an international motivational speaker and the author of Dream Big, an autobiography about overcoming a lifetime of trauma and abuse that led to dreams of success. Kathy inspires people the world over to change their lives and improve their self-worth. Her book will change your life. She's passionate about personal growth and believes anyone can change their circumstances and overcome their obstacles if they believe in themselves. Her life will amaze you and seriously inspire you. Be sure to order a copy of her book, Dream Big, on Amazon.com. I'm Shelley Johnson with Kathy Tuccaro. You can hear us Tuesdays on tncradio.live at 8 p.m. Eastern on Women Road Warriors. And don't miss Steve Summers' Overnight Drive right here on tncradio.live, weeknights midnight to 5 a.m. Eastern. Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live.
Hi, I'm Jamie Irvin, and I'm with James Rogers and Tom Kelly. We had a passionate discussion about AB5 on the other side of the break in our first segment. One of the reasons why this law around really restricting the trucking industry from operating the way it always has with small business owner-operators. One of the reasons I think we're also passionate about it is not just that we're resistant to change, but it's that this is going to put added pressure on the trucking industry. It's going to be devastating to the trucking industry. And also, by extension, then there is a heavy price to pay for society. We're already paying more for the things we need just to survive, things like our housing costs and fuel and food, because of this inflationary pressure that we have not seen in 40 years. Making the trucking industry, making it harder for us to do what we need to do to keep the supply chain going is only going to add to those inflationary pressures. As long as there is more demand than there is supply, prices are going to keep going up. And that means everybody pays the price. And I don't think our politicians always fully understand the implications of some of these decisions on individual people. And if they do, and they make those decisions anyway, shame on them. Let's talk about fuel prices. James, you operate a fleet. You are paying at the pump. And there's been some news that has come out that's going to affect surcharges. So the market is still awaiting an update on the data that is the basis for fuel surcharges, which means that we may not see any relief at the pump anytime soon. How have things been going for you, James? How are you handling this huge increase in fuel expenses?
Well, the biggest thing we've done is we've got a really good fuel card program. My fleet is, we are members of NASTC, and we use their fuel program. And we've been averaging, for the size of our fleet, we've been averaging roughly still about a 52 cent a gallon discount. But with that being said, it's constantly rising. And what's really getting frustrating about it is the fact that the Department of Energy decided about 2 weeks ago that they were going to change how they calculate the surcharge, and as far as the average, the national average price of fuel, and it's put them about 2 to 3 weeks behind now. And it's really frustrating, because when you got carriers that work on contracted freight, or if you're a small carrier and you're running dedicated freight, you can't compensate accurately for that fuel surcharge. You're kind of stuck in limbo. As far as the pain that we're seeing, for across our fleet, which is the end of the month, and I was looking at some reports and stuff right before the show, is that for this month, and today's the last day of the month, my fleet is costing us 85 cents a gallon, or 85 cents a mile for fuel, and that's pretty significant. And that's pretty significant when you get out here and you're running. I know for the truck that I operate part time, if I go to top the tanks off, it costs me $1,200. The pump shuts off at $999.99 every time, and I'm still not full of fuel. So it's, and for those that don't have a good fuel program, it's definitely painful for them, and a lot of companies are going out of business based on the rising cost of fuel, so to speak.
Well, you make a good point, James. Yeah, you make a good point, James, because retail prices have remained stubbornly sticky. Sonar shows that since the recent high of $5.85 per gallon on June 22nd, the average national retail price on diesel has only come down to, get this, $5.82. So we've only seen a 3-cent drop at the retail price level. So if you don't have a good deal, and even if you have a good deal, I mean, yeah, you might be getting a discount, but a discount on what? This all-time record high fuel prices. So no matter what, you're paying at the pump.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're gonna pay it regardless. It's just at this point, a good fuel program is nothing more than kind of the ability to take a little bit of a breath, but you're still paying it. And what's made it even harder is that the rates are not following the fuel rates, where before the rates were following the fuel, but they kind of sustained and they're holding. And of course, it's all cyclical, kind of with the scenario that this industry is in, all the way from the supply chain crunch to the law, obviously the 85, and then here we are talking about fuel, and it's just why. There's no real good answer, because when you look at the price of fuel on the stock market, for crude, it's like that doesn't make sense why it keeps going up when it's doing what it does daily at the fuel on the world market.
Yeah, it's all supply and demand. I mean, inventories right now, for the first time since January, are now above 30 days, which means in North America right now we have fuel reserves in excess of 30 days. And that's the first time since January. In Alberta, where I live here in Canada, our province just released their budget. We were at an $18 billion deficit in the middle of the pandemic, and we just reported a $4 billion surplus. All of that $18 billion deficit has been recovered by the province. We have a $4 billion surplus. This is all at the expense of everyday people and the commercial vehicles that operate inside the trucking industry, because we've paid a massive price. And a lot of oil companies and even some of the states and provinces that rely on energy, they're taking a windfall right now and having record profits. So the good thing is that the demand is coming down because the supply is going up, and we need to see that continue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I mean, everything you just said is spot on. And there are things that certain the administration of the country is trying to do, which when you work the math out, it's not going to do anything but save people like $7 over the course of 90 days if they do enact the fuel tax program where they don't charge it for 90 days. It's like an average of $7. That's not really going to help. But what it is going to do is it's still going to allow the oil companies and the powers to be to continue to raise the price. There's also talk about Governor Newsom in California. He's talking about sending people $1,000 to assist with gas, which that's really not going to do nothing but increase even more inflation, just print money out of thin air. And it's going to obviously still open the door for oil companies to continue to raise the price because there's money that could be spent at their pumps.
The good thing, the good thing in all of this is U.S. oil production is up to 12.1 million barrels per day. That's the highest level since the final week of April in 2020, just when the pandemic was starting. So that is the good news, because we are back to pre-pandemic levels, which in the long term we would hope would bring these prices down. We need this. We need this relief, not in a month, not in 6 months from now. We need it right now.
Oh, absolutely, we do. I mean, if not, there's going to be companies that are going to continue to go out. I mean, I think it was in May. In the month of May alone, there were over 9,000 small carrier authorities that were reported to have either put their authorities dormant or just gone out of business. That is, that's significant, because you don't know the number of trucks that either one of those have. But the main reason for over 80% of those was the rising cost of fuel, and they just couldn't afford it. So if this trend does continue, it's gonna continue to hamper this industry. Continue to do it.
Tom, we haven't had a chance to hear from you. What have you been hearing from your perspective with TNC Radio? You're operating that. You're talking to a lot of people in the trucking industry.
Well, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's massively frustrating for all of them at this point. And everybody keeps saying, here's the struggle. I want to give you guys some good news here and say help is on the way. Here's what's going to happen. But as you just pointed out, there's nothing really serious on the table right now today, and we need the relief right now today. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And
oh yeah.
We like to, on this program, think that we're going to come up with the positive side of the news, and here's the good things that you can like we were doing last week with the cybersecurity. You come away with some things that you can actually do that will make a difference. And right now we're not getting that.
Tom, there is something that everyone can do. You gotta start talking to your representatives. You need to be in communication. The entire industry needs to talk to our representatives. They have to be made to understand what role trucking plays in society and how important it is, what our struggles are, and what the solutions we need. It's one proactive thing that we can do. And really, just like with right to repair in the parts industry that I work in, you've got to talk to your representatives, and we need more of the federal and state representatives to be able to back the trucking industry.
Oh, absolutely. And it is. It's actually vitally important, not just for people in this industry, but just for everyday other people, to do. Please talk, because the reality of it is that there are murmurs of a possible shutdown, of a possible strike, and then of course with people just, through attrition, just going out of business because they can no longer afford it. The reality of it is that it could get to a point that 3 days, all it takes is 3 days of this industry being seriously restricted, and the country is in jeopardy. It is.
You're listening to Mind Your Trucking Business on tncradio.live, and you've got Jamie Irvin, James Rogers, and Tom Kelly here. We've been talking about newsworthy items that are impacting the trucking industry. Don't go anywhere. On the other side of our break, we're going to talk about the supply chain issues that we are seeing, and we're going to talk about what is happening with those parts that you need to keep your trucks and trailers rolling. We'll be right back.
Ride the Southern Route with Shannon Courier Tuesdays at 7, 6 Central on tncradio.live.
I wanna rock!
Welcome into another edition of the Leadership Library, hosted by CEO and author Rocky Romanella. Rocky is the author of the book Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, and has over 40 years of business experience as a prominent member of the UPS Supply Chain Solutions team, as well as the CEO of Unitech Global Services. So sit back, grab your notebook, and take a seat, and get ready for this edition of the Leadership Library.
Welcome to the Leadership Library. I'm your host, Rocky Romanella, and we're going to continue on our series on this topic of action plans and the SWOT analysis. Today, we're going to talk about weaknesses. Now, I'm not going to take the easy way out and just give you the list of what I gave you under strengths and then say poor quality or poor customer service because I just said customer service was a strength. No, I'm going to talk about something that's going to change your way of thinking a little bit. And that's this concept of don't allow your strengths to be your weaknesses. Now, obviously, when you're talking about the weaknesses, you're talking about some of the deficiencies that you see that you're trying to fix. It could be a lack of technology, or technology isn't as strong as you would like it to be. Or maybe you haven't done a good job on building strong alliances and partnerships. You haven't taken the time to build an intellectual property kind of practice inside your organization. So you haven't trademarked, or you haven't, maybe put things through a patent process. You have a higher cost structure than you would like, and maybe your brand isn't as strong in the marketplace as you'd like. Those are all the obvious, I think, weaknesses, and really become sort of, as we were joking here in the beginning, of, okay, in the strengths, I may say we have strong brand awareness, but now I'm saying we have weaker or poor brand awareness. That's true. But I want you to think about weaknesses sometimes as being a part of your strength. And what I mean by that is one of the things that we always try to guard against is don't allow your strength to become your weakness. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you asked me what my strengths were as an individual, if you were doing a SWOT analysis with me as part of a career development process, and we listed my strengths, and you said, okay, Rocky, what do you think your strengths are? I would say my energy, my enthusiasm. I'm a hard worker. I get to the spot quick. I'm creative. I'm innovative. I'm always thinking of new ideas. So that could be a list. That almost sounds boastful. I don't mean it to be. I'm just listing strengths as part of this conversation. What would my weaknesses be? Well, I'd probably tell you my weaknesses in my case would be I get to the spot quick, my energy, my enthusiasm, my hard work. Because if you think about it for a second, my strength in many ways is my weaknesses, especially when you're talking about people, for example. Because if have this what I believe excellent work ethic, which may mean, I'm there 10 or 12 hours a day. Well, the people in my care, the people who work for me may think they have to work 10 or 12 hours a day. Well, if he's coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning, do I have to be there at 5:30? If he's leaving at 6 o'clock at night, do I have to leave at 6:30? So you always have to guard against not allowing your strength to be your weakness. I think that's so important. So as you start to put together the weaknesses in your action plan, look, there's going to be the obvious. Yeah, maybe your quality is not as good as you'd like it to be. Maybe your customer service process in your phone center isn't as good as it could be. And those are real issues you have to address. But don't lose sight of your strengths and not allowing your strengths to become your weakness. You have to guard against that. Especially, think about, for example, in the business side of it, you love the idea that you're a highly efficient organization. We used to have, years ago at UPS, we had a saying that said we run the tightest ship in the shipping business. We were so proud of that logo, except that when you talk to customers, they would be, well, that's great for you, but tightest ship in the shipping business is about you. Does that mean you won't come back for a second pickup if I'm not ready because that's inefficient? So you have to wonder, is that strength really becoming a weakness? So I think that under the W, there are the obvious weaknesses that you need to address. But I also think you should look at your strengths and then look at, are any of my strengths becoming part of my weaknesses? And how do I ensure that that doesn't happen? So we've covered the S, we've covered the W. We're going to talk about opportunities and then barriers. Until our next conversation, thank you for joining the Leadership Library. I am your host, Rocky Romanella, who's always working to guard against not allowing my strengths to become my weakness. Thanks, and talk to you soon. Be safe out there, everyone.
You're listening to TNCRadio.live. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network Show with Shelley Johnson. Weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back in. Tom Kelly along with Jamie Irvin and James Rogers. James, I understand you ran into a little problem with your truck. What's going on, man?
I did last night, coming through Arkansas, through just down Searcy, coming around 67. Apparently, I'd got a pinhole in my upper radiator hose on my truck. I'd stopped, and I was trying to see if I could get that part. And I called 8 or 9 dealerships, different TAs and Petros and other part suppliers. And I can't find that one hose within 200 miles of my location. I can't find it. I ended up having to call a shop, a very small shop back in my hometown, and they're going to make me one when I get back. So for right now, I've had to, kind of create a temporary fix for it so it'll hold. But it's just crazy that I can't find a radiator hose, something that's dire in most situations, within 200 miles. A radiator hose, probably about a $5 or $6 part, and I can't find one. And it's something that could just shut me down. Yeah.
James, what year is that truck and what make?
2005 Western Star 4900 EX.
Yeah. So, it is an older truck, but we're not talking about some truck that there wouldn't normally be parts available. So this really dovetails into what I'm hearing. I work in the heavy duty parts industry. I do a lot of consulting with manufacturers of parts. So these parts manufacturers, they sit in between the truck OEM. They supply them parts, and then that truck OEM assembles the truck and sends it out. And then they supply parts to the Tier 1 parts program through the truck dealership groups, as well as to the aftermarket distributors. And when I talk to some of my clients who are kind of sitting in that role, they are talking about extreme lead times on some categories of parts. In fact, one distributor just told me that they were quoted 70 weeks on an entire order, an entire line of parts. 70 weeks.
I was going to say, you said 70 weeks, not 70 days, right?
70 weeks, 70 weeks. That's, I mean, and like, the person who I was talking to, this is the CEO of the company. So this is coming from, the very, very top. And I was told, they said, look, anything over 52 weeks, we don't even take seriously, because in 70 weeks and more than a year from now, there's no guarantee that part is going to be available or the price is going to be what it is. So the supply chain issue is now upgraded to supply chain crisis, because, like, to your point, that one $6 part, if you hadn't caught it and if it had been a more catastrophic failure, that could have taken out your engine.
Oh, quickly. Absolutely. It could have left me stranded on the side of the road, or, even at worst case scenario, could have blown the engine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so everything from unscheduled downtime, tow bills, extra hotel expenses, the works, right up to a blown engine. I mean, this is what operators are facing on a day-to-day basis, and the way to mitigate this is very difficult, because, to your point, you called aftermarket suppliers of parts, you called dealerships, and nobody was able to get that part. And that's because that part hasn't been made, because the raw materials haven't been produced so that the manufacturers of that part could actually get it out. And if they, the other thing that I think has happened is, like, you're operating an older vehicle. And so when a manufacturer has, X amount of raw material for, let's say, rubber for hoses, or if it was, if it's EDM, or if it is silicone, so they've got X amount of raw materials, and they have a choice, right? Are we going to make hoses for our tier 1 truck OEM who's trying to build new trucks? Or are we going to make hoses for our second and third owners of older vehicles? They're going to choose the OEM and the new production every time. And so that's what I think is happening, is that the second and third owners are the ones who are going to really feel this, just because there's a limited supply, and therefore the parts are going to new truck production, not making parts for older vehicles.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't. What about 70? I don't even want to discuss it. 70 weeks that's scary.
Well, and I mean, keep in mind, this isn't every product and every line, but the fact that our supply chain crisis has pushed some product lines to that level just gives you an indication of how bad it really is. It also gives us an indication of when we might be able to see relief. And that is, we all hoped it was going to be the latter part of 2022. We're talking 2024 here, folks, before things like semiconductors, which Tom and I talked about a couple weeks ago, right through to hard parts, for replacement parts for trucks and trailers. We could be talking 2024 before the supply chain catches up.
Oh, man. I'm speechless. I don't even know what to think about it.
So we want to give people solutions, right?
Right.
The thing that is important to remember is, in the past, we always relied on local supply, right? It was like, we have a problem with the truck, we've diagnosed the problem, like in James's case, you need a rat hose. That's very reactive. So we need you to shift your focus to more proactive. There are common parts that you're going to need at some point, and you're going to have to invest some money in trying to acquire those parts. So that's step one. You got to shift to as much proactive maintenance and repair as possible. The second thing is, we need to expand your supplier network. So there are some emerging companies. There's one company, for example, finditparts.com. Finditparts.com. They are an emerging e-commerce supplier. If you're into automotive parts, Rock Auto would be a comparable company. It's an aftermarket supplier, but this is a supplier that you can just jump on your phone, mobile device, you can order the part, they'll ship it right to you. Now that doesn't solve James's problem when he's on the side of the road, but it's one more supplier, and it's suppliers like that can provide you with what you need at least next day or within a couple days. So if you are being proactive, or if you can get the truck back to your shop and do the repair on the weekend, you can go ahead and get access to an inventory of parts that's national. And so they're pulling from, not just 3 suppliers, but maybe they're pulling from 50 suppliers. And that inventory, they're pulling it from all over the country. And so we do need to change our buying behavior to adapt to the situation. Now, is that going to solve every parts issue? No, but it is going to alleviate some of this, because we have to use the internet and digital tools to our advantage to keep these trucks and trailers rolling.
Absolutely. I mean, that's like a key component to any trucking, all the way from a single truck operator to a fleet to, the mega carriers. If we don't have parts, then you got trucks that are just sitting.
Yeah. And now's the time. Now's the time to evaluate your supplier network and really leverage the tools you have at your disposal to be able to build relationships with multiple suppliers. And that's what you need. Before, you needed like your aftermarket parts store locally and 1 or 2 truck dealerships, and you were probably good. You need to have a list of suppliers that you can go to that is much more national and less regional, and a longer list than you've ever had before.
Absolutely. I mean, that's I'm looking it up right now as we speak to find that website that you gave. So
there you go. And my friends over at Find a Parts will love the shout out.
There you go.
I just wish I was getting a commission. I could give some of that money to you guys.
Right.
All right, guys. We'll take a break. We'll come back and put a wrapper on all of this right here on TNCRadio.live. Mind your trucking business. Stay with us.
It's Truckers Life Radio from TFC Global with your host, Ron Frazier. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Here we're helping drivers as they travel life's highway. I love that. The spiritual side, drivers face a lot out on the road. Truckers Life Radio digs in on the spiritual and moral questions that drivers face on a daily basis. You don't want to miss it. Every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is boosting the image of the industry by telling the story of trucking, and your story can be part of it. Upload a photo, tell us what you love about trucking, or send us a story about a good deed or charitable act in trucking. Be sure to follow us on social media and contact us through truckingmovesamerica.com. That's truckingmovesamerica.com. Hey drivers, did you hear music on TNCRadio.live that you really liked? Or maybe you heard us interview an author of a book you'd like to read or listen to. You can get the books, music, and other products you hear about by going to our website at www.tncradio.live and clicking on the shopping cart.
TNCRadio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Welcome back to Mind Your Trucking Business on TNCRadio.live.
Hi, I'm Jamie Irvin. I'm with James Rogers and Tom Kelly, and we have been talking today about some pretty significant news that affects the trucking industry. Everything from labor laws and the fight in California against AB5 to high diesel prices and the lack of parts that are, really forming into not just supply chain issue, but a supply chain crisis. As always, we're trying to provide you with what you need to know to run your business. We're trying to give you also practical things that you can do. One thing I wanted to mention is with this labor law and the fact that the Supreme Court has denied the motion to hear AB5 and the challenges that the California Trucking Association has brought forth. This has big implications, James, across the country. I believe there's some other states that are basically just looking to California, and whatever happens there, they're going to imitate that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The last word that was on the streets was that you got Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then Jersey that are basically just we're waiting. We're waiting on this decision. They already had the law written in hand. They were just waiting on a final decision. to follow California's footsteps, and that's, I mean, I'm going to anticipate that that's going to be the next thing. Is those three states are going to suffer the same consequences as the independent owner operators and contractors in California suffer. And it's going to further create a problem.
So our commitment to all of you listeners is that we want to provide you with practical things that you can do to overcome some of these big issues. I think it's a little premature for us to provide you with a strategy to deal with AB5, but we're going to keep our eye on it. We've got some experts who really have some deep knowledge about it that we're going to be consulting. We might even be able to bring them on the show. Our commitment to you, keep listening, because we're going to come back to you with a few options as to what you might be able to do, and we're going to provide you with as many strategies as possible to help mitigate that. Tom, in the long term, it seems to me that fuel prices have to come back down. They just have to. But what is your viewpoint on when we might see some relief at the pump?
Seeing that there's no real action going on right now to relieve it, I'm an optimist. Okay, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I don't see any relief coming for months, because we're not doing the things that we need to do to get the stuff to come down. I do like that some of the futures markets are looking a little bit better, but that again takes a while to translate to issues. Those things don't translate today to the relief we need today.
Yeah.
So, while I'm an optimist, glass half full right now, the rest of the class isn't going to fill up here for months. This is the halfway through the year. If we see significant relief between now and September 1st in diesel prices, I would be stunned, happily stunned. But I don't see that happening in the next 3 months, at least. And Jamie, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about too. Speaking of big changes going on, as this show is being recorded and put together on June the 30th, 2022, it's worth noting something very important's happening out there, and that is the shutdown of the 3G networks that T-Mobile controls. And this is liable to impact ELDs across the board. And even though people have been talking about this for a year, people don't always pay attention to what kind of ELD they have. And some people are going to find out today that their ELD doesn't work anymore. And won't work again anytime soon. So the 3G networks have to be shut down to create more space per rules from the FCC and all that. So that's happening. So today it's like triple witching hour for truck drivers, especially if you're driving an older truck that needs parts and has an older ELD.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and on top of that, let's say it's a gas guzzler too. It only gets 5 miles. I mean, what are you going to do? It's a rough day. And if you're an independent contractor on top of that, well, you know what? Maybe it is time to figure out how to go drive Uber.
Yeah. I was going to say that you would really have to evaluate everything you got going on and look at the hard reality of, do I need to put it dormant? Do I need to shut it down? Do I need to consider leasing on to a mega carrier, or even taking a step back and go be a company driver until all the storm passes?
It's rough out there for sure.
One thing I wanted to talk about with the diesel prices, I mean, if there's nothing we can do there, then we can make our trucks more efficient. So there's a couple of things that you can do. If your truck has a diesel emission system, everything 2007 and after does, one of the most important things that I can recommend is making sure that your diesel emission system, including your DPF filter, is kept clean, as clean as possible. There's a solution out there for decarbonization of both your engine and your emission system that's available through a company called Decarb. You could check that out. You want to make sure that when your DPF filter comes out and you have it cleaned, that you have the entire system inspected, because it might be that your SCR or your your other components in the system need to have a bit of service done and perhaps even cleaned as well. So there's keeping that truck on the maintenance side as right up to date is very, very important. And, things like the cleaning doesn't require parts replacement. So it's not going to tap into that supply chain issue that we're talking about. And then the other thing that I would say just on the maintenance side for fuel is there are some products for aerodynamics that are very low cost that can make a significant difference. We're talking as much as 2 to 5% on your fuel economy. So, look into that. There's a couple products like the EcoFin is a very cheap product that has a really great engineered backed solution to lower emission costs, fuel costs in total. It's a vortex it actually disrupts the vortex around the vehicle and kicks the air out, makes the vehicle more aerodynamic, and it is something that you can actually install yourself. So there's several things like that. By all means, anytime you want some help on that side of it, you want some ideas, reach out to me directly, because I would be happy to provide you with introductions to some of the products and people that I know in the industry to help you get those fuel costs down. I know right now spending a little bit of money to save money seems almost counterproductive, but it might be the only way to provide you with a little bit of relief on your fuel prices. So we can talk more about that in the future. But again, by all means, reach out to me directly anytime for advice on products and introductions to people that can help you.
All right, guys. Hey, it's time for us to wrap it up here. So real briefly, how can people reach out to you, Jamie?
So the best way is to go over to heavydutypartsreport.com. That's my website for my show, but it also has all my contact info and social media links. So that way you can get a hold of me. And you could also email me at jamie@heavydutypartsreport.com.
And James, how about for you? How can people reach you?
Well, the easiest way is I have a podcast on YouTube, the Road Rage Podcast. You can go in there and search it. You can leave a comment on any of my videos to reach out. Or you can contact me by email at spartandirect@outlook.com. And we also do have a company website and a Facebook page. So there's multiple ways to get hold of me, and we'll help you out any way we can.
All right, fantastic. Of course, if you want to leave a message for any of us, you can drop us a note at info@tncradio.live. I'm Tom Kelly on behalf of Jamie Irvin and James Rogers. Thank you so much for listening in tonight to Mind Your Trucking Business. And music out. Okay, guys. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. And we will, I'll be talking to you soon. I got to get
Okay, sounds good. See ya.
All right.
See ya.
Do you have the TNCRadio.live app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.